start with a quote. So as much as the wall performs the necessity of continued occupation, it also inadvertently performs these internal contestations and anxieties of state. The wall both veils and partially constitutes the violent reality of a shifting colonial frontier, and the us here, them there ideology it supposedly performs is undermined by the settlement enterprise. Who is us and who is them? Where is here and where is there? Not only are they, the Palestinians, in here, but we, settlers, are out there, glimpsed through barbed wire or perched on hilltops. So that's from a piece by Rachel Busbridge called Performing Colonial Sovereignty and the Israeli Separation Wall. So to back it up a little bit, my oral history project for my co-op was entitled Race Object, the West Bank Wall in Israel-Palestine. And sort of the inspiration for that is I grew up in a Jewish household, and for many Jews, very quickly you come to the realization that at some point somebody's going to expect you to have an opinion on Israel-Palestine. And it can come at many different stages of development or age. For me, it was in high school. But it's kind of a jarring thing because in many respects, you know, through the synagogue, you're kind of taught to just have this latent acceptance of Zionism and Israel's right to defend herself, right? So fast forward to coming into my fourth year at Antioch, I was thinking about what I wanted to do for my senior project. And I settled on this sort of political economic history of the wall along the West Bank and Israel-Palestine as a manifestation of sort of racial ideologies in the region. So I was really interested in this idea of race making place and place making race, and those two things being in conversation with one another. So when I was going and trying to find my final co-op, originally I really wanted to go to Israel and conduct research there. But unfortunately, because of travel advisories, that didn't really work out. So plan B was to go to Washington, D.C., use that time to do some reading, do some project work with an organization called Jewish Voice for Peace, and then as a separate element to sort of feed into the eventual paper that was going to be created, I was conducting these interviews for this oral history project. And for me, it was just as much about digging into sort of the Jewish cultural trauma that led to Zionism as it was to giving voice to Palestinian rights. And so it was kind of an odd process of getting embroiled in all of these different Jewish leftist circles and anti-racist organizations at the same time as there was sort of a split in Jewish leftism. And that was one of the main takeaways I had, is that within Jewish leftist circles, the fault line is your opinion about Israel-Palestine, and it's always hanging out in the background. And that was kind of manifest in a couple of the interviews I got to do. And the other thing that was really interesting was what interviews I was allowed to publish and who signed releases. So I conducted 3 interviews I scheduled 4. I got many, many, many no's. And only one of them was allowed to be published. Only one of them signed the release. And that was really with the person that I was working with Jewish Voice for Peace, which again is an anti-occupation organization. And one of the interviews that was not allowed to be published was with a member of the AIPAC, American Israeli Political Affairs Committee, more colloquially known as the Israel Pact in Washington, D.C. And when I first walked in there, it quickly became apparent that they never had intended for this work to be shown publicly. The first question that they asked when I reached out to them was I Jewish? And then I came in and then proceeded to take sort of a tongue lashing from them about how race had nothing to do with Israel-Palestine. And then on the other hand, I did an interview that was not allowed to be published with an organization called Palestine Works. And sort of the political immediacy of passing a new military aid deal between the U.S. and Israel caused them to be really, really nervous about one of their employees expressing personal thoughts on Israel-Palestine in the public eye. So both of those were kind of stricken from the record in some respect, but I learned a lot about the ways people navigate this conversation. So yeah, I mean, that's really about it, and we'll see where it goes from here. I'm still in conversations to possibly continue doing interviews. But yeah, I guess the main takeaway for me was more a selfish one than it was anything for the public good. I mean, we talk about public-facing documentation in oral history, and that's great, but for me it was really more investigating this trauma that goes into a conversation that many people have opinions about Israel-Palestine, and everybody and their grandmother wants to tell you about it when you're face-to-face in just sort of common conversation. But as soon as you present folks with the possibility of being responsible for those opinions, it's a whole other ballgame. So that was my project. I don't know if you want to go next.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Wyatt. I'm a fourth-year philosophy major at Antioch. Yeah, got it. I was also in this class, and I did a project called, I tried to do a project called Memories of 68 on the founding of the Afro-American Studies Institute at Antioch College. Yeah, I wanted to do this project because it seemed like there were certain similarities between Antioch now and in 68, because the student of color group at Antioch recently, in the spring, asked for POC only dorm in Birch Hall at Antioch, and in 68 there was actually an all-black student dorm that got established on campus that lasted for about a year before it got shut down by the federal government. So I was really just interested in exploring that project because there's not a lot of information out there on what happened inside of the dorm, or it was more than just a dorm. It was also a Black Studies program, so they would teach classes and stuff. They would get graduate students from University of Chicago to come in and teach classes in the dorm.
Sorry, Patty.
So yeah, the goal of this project was originally to get between 3 and 5 interviews or so, and I ended up getting one interview that was with someone that wrote their dissertation on the project, but I didn't actually get any interviews with anybody that had been in the program. I originally thought that this project would be sort of easy to pursue. I didn't envision that the real challenge for me in this project would be actually getting in contact with people to interview, but that turned out to be the most difficult thing, unfortunately. I just could not find, I researched people and I reached out to them, but I never got any responses. And this just happened for 5 weeks until the term was pretty much over. And then at the end, I finally got in contact with some folks who were going to set me up with a bunch of people to interview, but at that point, it was too late to start interviewing. So the project got tabled, and I didn't get to complete it, but it was still a really good learning experience, because I now feel very confident that if I wanted to pursue another oral history project, I would now have the tools to be able to do so. I know how to write a project page. I know how to actually conduct an interview, because we went over that in class, and I worked with Brooke too about in her oral history FF, so that's a whole other thing. But yeah, it was a pretty good experience. It was a really good learning experience. That's about all I got on it. Yeah. Thanks. Dale, you want to?
So, hello, my name is Dale. I'm a self-design major at Antioch College in anthropology and media arts, specifically looking at photography, but media arts covers audio, video, and all the such, so I'm going to find mine over here. There it is. So, I was a little different. I went to Japan, so my difficulties weren't so much finding interviews, but more being able to actually interview someone in Japanese. I've been taking Japanese at Antioch College for the past 3 years, and before that I lived in Japan for a year as a Rotary exchange student. So I have a basic level of Japanese, but my formal Japanese is very iffy, if non-existent. So I have 2 interviews on the side. I actually ended up getting 3 interviews, but my last interview was so late in the term that I did not have time to index it properly, so it has yet to be uploaded to my project page. But the 2 interviews I do have, one is with Yamashita Jota, who was my boss at the time. I worked for a company in Wazuka, Japan, which is a small town in the Kyoto prefecture of Japan. And if anyone knows anything about Japan, they know that most towns have a train station. This town was so small it did not have a train station. I had to take a bus to a train station to get to anywhere. So it's a small town, and its economy is pretty much basically made out of tea. The town is famous for tea farming. It has been a tea farming town for the past 800 years, and it's kind of the center of tea culture in Japan. 800 years ago, when they first consider it started, really, is when the imperial court dedicated Wazuka's territory to being a tea farming village, and they would pay their taxes in tea. It was considered that good. So recently, Wazuka's been facing this problem with aging population and urban to rural migration, that people are leaving the town, young people are leaving the town, and tea farming is such a generational business that they don't really have anyone to inherit the tea farms. So they're starting to worry that as the older farmers die, no one's going to be able to take care of the tea farms, and the town itself will die out, which is a phenomenon that we've seen in a lot of places quite universally. So it's a real concern for them. And my boss, Yamashita-san, he is running a company now called UN Village. He was not born in Wazuka, but he moved there with his parents and lived in America for a little while before coming back to Wazuka because, as he says, he's a U-turn generation. He left because he thought he wanted to leave and then realized he really didn't, so he came back. Started this organization, and the point of UN Village is to bring traffic back into Wazuka. It's bringing tourism back into Wazuka, making it more internationally known, and hopefully in the end bringing migration back into Wazuka, either through people moving into Wazuka or another U-turn generation. And then the interview I had with Nakayama Miyuki, she is a tea instructor, a certified tea instructor in Kyoto. In Kyoto, she says there's about 300 official tea instructors, and they can teach you proper tea traditions. They are the kind of authority on how to properly brew tea and difference in teas, and it's a very prestigious job in the tea community, at least. So my project was to focus on how the culture of Wazuka was changing because of how they're starting to be trying to become more of a tourist culture. I wanted to see how tea culture, tea farming in general has been changing. So my 3 months was spent mostly working in tea farms, working at a tea cafe that only sold locally made teas and goods, and observing what was happening, as well as having interviews. And using those interviews to kind of round out my own observations of the town. And this UN Village is a very new company. It's only 3 years old, so they haven't really had much reach yet. Within the town, it's definitely well known, but internationally it's only starting to get going. And the tea farms themselves, some of them have international goods sold. There's one tea farm called Obubu Tea, which you can look up actually and order tea from anywhere in the world. They make very good tea as well, but most of the tea farms only sell domestically. So they're trying their best to make it more international, make it more open pretty much. It's hard to get to, not many people know about it, but it's a very important center to Japan and Japanese culture. But because it's so recent, there wasn't really much change happening, active change that you could compare. It was just the starts of change. But my real trouble came with interviewing because, as I said, my Japanese is only so-so. These interviews are actually in Japanese, but they're so short because I can use follow-up questions. I couldn't, when I had the questions pre-made, but when they answered something, I couldn't really follow up and say, oh, that's interesting, please tell me more, because most of these interviews I had to go back and listen to again and again in order to get the proper translation. So that was kind of an issue for me personally. I was lucky with my boss, Yamashita-san, he spoke English as well, so even though we conducted the interview in Japanese, if I was having a problem with the question, I could ask in English and then he could answer in Japanese, which really helped me out. My friend Nakayama-san, she only speaks Japanese, so our interview was much shorter because I didn't feel comfortable really asking anything that I wasn't certain was proper Japanese. But otherwise, it was really interesting. And I learned a lot about how the culture is changing, and I learned a lot about what they're doing to make it change, and how people in the village, besides the two that I have as examples here who are directly connected to the company, how people outside the company are feeling the change, and how people outside the company are looking for change and how it's really going. So it was I'd like to consider it a success, even if I only got the 3 interviews and even if 2 of them were pretty short. I still consider this a successful term, and I was really glad to have Brooke's support too. So yeah, that's what I got.